undead. These creatures are beings that don't die even when they are killed. But for us who are immortals, who transcended life and death, mastering the dimension was easy for us. And certainly, this dimension called Earth will also be just a matter of time before it is dominated. But this is what I thought. He points in a direction and tries to understand how this was possible. Because how could it be impossible? You were in the middle of the fire, but even in the middle of the fire, you were alive. He was just a human. How does a human have such strength? At this moment, that certain unknown human who was in the middle of the fire advances towards the skeleton. But as the devil was still alive, we asked, but he approaches and stays there thinking about life. He also doesn't know anything about how he's alive, but one thing he knows is that here he was the strongest. Like, stronger than that skeleton, and now he will have to do some serious damage to him. So he prepares a powerful punch and advances towards the skeleton. The skeleton only sees a punch approaching, but at the moment that punch was about to hit the skeleton, we go back a little to the past, like 2 years ago, in a house, like the house of our hero's sister. We see her there, already irritated with him because too much time had passed. And she didn't want him to stay in her house anymore since he was just living there as a favor in his sister's house. She only asked him to find a job, so humbly, he said he might get one, but she asks our hero to go back to their parents' house. She gets more and more irritated with him, but no, he wouldn't do that because if he did, he would basically be asking his parents to support him there. She was irritated because she didn't want to be supported by her parents, but rather by her sister, who didn't want that either. But she asks him to find a job the next day. He goes into his room, understanding that he really needed to do that, even closing the door in his sister's face. She asks one last time for him to get a job soon, but now he sighs and sees that things weren't going well. But priorities now, those priorities were to rest. At this moment, he goes straight to bed. Kang Hyun wondered how he got into this situation. Poor, without money, without a job, and well, without a social life either. But okay, that wasn't important because now he saw that he needed to find a stable job, or else his sister would definitely kick him out of her house. Okay, while he was about to sleep, Kang Hyun looks at his computer monitor and realizes he left the game on, but as tired as he is, he just said he'd turn it off the next day. However, he thinks about one thing, that if at least real life were a game, that would be cool because then he might have a cool job like being a mage or a swordsman or an archer. That was already good for him. So he closes his eyes, and the night falls, but something mysterious happens behind him. That mysterious thing was our dear system. The system detects a dimensional pattern from the reality of our hero. His reality distorts, and the system ends up logging into World R. Still asleep, even drooling from his mouth, we see the system sending that message to the player. The player will now have to be sent to a new dimension. Well, in this dimension, he will have to do some tests outside of a planet in another unknown place that was also an unknown dimension. He was teleported there, being sent to this other world. He felt a heat and quickly opened his eyes. With his eyes open, he looked around and didn't understand what was happening. What he saw was a white flash, but well, that wasn't important because in front of him appeared that system screen. The system screen showed things, but what caught his attention the most was the letter that appeared in front of him. But that thing started counting down from 26 seconds. 25, well, it reached 0, and it gave a welcome to the tutorial of our Kang Hyun. He ended up blinking at that thing and didn't want to miss a single pixel of that thing. The tutorial has 8 stages in total, but dying here might not affect real life, and he also couldn't die in the middle there. And he ended up receiving the system as well with some missions. This mission was simple, to complete a certain short challenge there. And so then we observe a small system screen appearing, saying that the master ended up kind of being sent to a game. He was happy for the return of his master, but he sees that the dream of his realistic game had become real. Well, he needed to get some treatments maybe to see this, or it was likely that his parents would do that. But at this moment, he had nothing more to worry about. With his hand on his face, he sees there that the reality of his dream might come true here in front of him. But after stopping and thinking, he sees that this was not a dream. Maybe this is real. and maybe it was a sign for him to start playing the game right away. But saying that he wanted to be playing another game, the system ends up understanding that he could already be starting his initial test. He only says there what was happening, saving from QU, but, well, the system doesn't let him finish his sentence because he had to talk there. It was just to complete a time in the test. If he completes this, he earns some things. The test is a bridge. He keeps wondering what bridge. The system then shows him. He looks up and sees in front of him fire and more fire, but the fire came from some very thin bridges, and his objective was to cross to the next bridge, and maybe if he fell down there into that fire, he might die. But at that moment he says, "What kind of heat is this?" Since all of this he was seeing here might have been happening in his dreams. But if it was a dream, what a crazy dream he had. He could also see other people appearing there in that place. The people were also looking down a bit to see the depth of this lava. Well, this dream was getting stranger and stranger. Maybe the dream couldn't get any stranger until, well, he looks to the side upon hearing someone calling him, calling for Kang Hyun. He quickly turns in the direction of this person. He looks there in front of him, his sister. He realizes that Kang Ryan was there in front of him. Well, maybe this was a crazy dream, but if it was to have a dream, he wanted to have a dream maybe with a bigger challenge. Well, this challenge was to put maybe his sister in this dream here maybe, and putting her here in his dream was maybe bad luck for him. But at that moment, because he said she was in his dream, she also says the same thing about being in her dreams. But actually, what kind of dream was this? Out of nowhere came a story that they needed to save the Earth. Well, before she could finish what she was going to say, Kang Hyun interrupts her, saying for her to stop interrupting his dreams. This dream wasn't hers. It was his. Well, but this didn't matter much since, well, in a dream, you don't feel heat, right? And besides, she comments that maybe they are talking alone, but he interrupts her again, saying that the brain easily gets tricked by simple things, saying that in a dream, you don't feel pain, but in reality, maybe you do. Last time, he was dreaming that he was tight in a fight, but he quickly managed to do something there that calmed him down quickly, only that he woke up the next day with the sheet kind of, well, soaked. But well, anyway. He is going, like she asks where he was going. He then points there before the system gave some certain tips. Follow the bridge to the end there. You get some things. Well, she seems like an NPC for being so dumb. Well, she gets mad at that, but this doesn't lead anywhere. But she wonders if falling here, maybe she would die. But dying in the dream was also impossible. However, he is interrupted by someone falling from there. The person walks past the two and goes straight through the ditch. He just looked down and saw the person being roasted down there. But at that moment, not only did they get roasted, but they also decided to let out some really loud screams, which scared the two. The two then turn back and are shocked, perhaps thinking about what would happen to them if they fell down there. But now, what was the problem? They wouldn't move forward. However, Kang Hyun freezes and doesn't understand what he would be doing from there on. But yeah, crossing this bridge wasn't that difficult. It was just a matter of crawling to the other side of the bridge. And actually, it was serious, right? Seeing her there with fear, he would walk across. But she also noticed that he was scared and asked him to follow her idea. So the two advance while the rest trembles. The two just crawl across this narrow dirt bridge. But walking along, she turns to Kang Hyun and asks him if he knows what was happening. But maybe this is a nightmare. But a very real nightmare. But having a dream like this wasn't impossible. Until today, in the real world, no one ever had a dream like this. And maybe if they fall down here, something will happen. And this has never happened to anyone before. And why did it happen to them now? The doubt lingers in the air. But Kang Hyun just freezes. But now that she touched on this subject, he freezes there, and now that she mentioned it, he might not be able to move forward anymore. But now that she stopped to think, she asks herself why she had to have such a useless brother like our Kang Hyun, who ends up collapsing there and even asks her to move on and leave him behind. But then, if he stays behind, he might wake up. And suppose this is all a dream, he will wake up with just a wet bed. But that's when he barely thought about it. In front of him, the system screen appears again. The two then clearly face that system that was there. The system gave them some time, but they didn't pass. Since they didn't pass within that short time, the system will increase the difficulty level. Everything starts to shake. Everyone on the same floor as them starts understanding why the bridge suddenly decided to shake. But looking back, he observes that the bridges started to crack. Not crack, but break. It was already in the middle, while the bridges were breaking piece by piece. Everyone was scared about it and saw that the bridge was going to fall, so everyone starts running and others fall into the lava in the middle. The two saw that now was the time to run and not stay still. She runs while our hero was still lying there on the ground. But to avoid falling into that pool of lava, he runs too. Running, we observe him trembling with fear. But he needed to stay calm since, looking a bit closer, the bridges weren't that narrow. And if by chance he doesn't trip, he can make it to the end. But he also couldn't look back, and he only thinks and looks forward. So he runs, but running as fast as possible, he notices something strange happening. His vision was sort of fading, so he needed to get there, but he wouldn't make it. Here, he understands why he didn't go out of the house anymore, staying inside. But in this, he can't run for long. But he turns his eyes to another place, where he sees above Kang Hyun, his sister, the bridge above falling. It was going to fall on top of her. He sees this, but at that moment, we observe her scene. She only sees the bridge falling on top of her. So that it doesn't crush her, our hero jumps toward her. Now, behind her, we observe him running full speed toward her so that at least he could save his sister. And so he ends up grabbing her. Grabbing her, he then pushes her out, where the two manage to pass the test. The two fall on their feet while observing the rest of the rocks evaporating in that lava. The bridges all fall around there now. We observe the system congratulating him for seeing him level up, and they managed to complete the first stage. Now that he looked at the system, he saw that he also received some new rewards, like a temporary awakening, but the awakening will be basically permanent after finishing the tutorial. Now that it's over, he can relax from the temporary awakening of the tutorial. What was that? Does it mean it's not over yet? In front of him, some things appear showing his level, his strength, his agility, and such. Using his things, she turns to him and asks if he can also see that, but he's finished. He then asks for the system screen to appear, and it does. He saw that this system screen was like receiving a birthday present, so he also wanted to see his own. And so, he forces his body to the maximum to see this system screen. As soon as he observes it, he realizes that his unique ability was resurrection. The rest was nothing. He just gets scared by it. The shock was so much that, well, he wakes up in real life. He wakes up in real life all sweaty, trying to understand what that was. Whether what he was experiencing was real or just a dream again. Then, with a crazy dream here, he goes running to the internet, telling everyone he had a crazy dream. The gorilla with red fists also kind of had the same dream. But in the dream, he ended up falling and died. Well, they wonder if it was a lucid dream. The question ends up trending, and it also spills outside the bubble. It even made it to the news, saying that a great survivor of the fire hell just happened to experience several mysterious reports that they were abducted to, I don't know, an unknown world. It ended up being posted on the internet, and then an anonymous unknown person on the internet comments that he will share everything he researched and also invested a good amount of money in it. He put it as a challenge: save the world there. He shared an anonymous link for people to enter. The comment below just said, "Fight while out there beyond the solar system." We observe the system commenting that his dimension will be basically reset here in 4 years. So he has just a few years to prepare to fall into the fight against powerful monsters. And the next day, we see the brothers waking up to shouts, calling their sister to see if she happened to have a dream similar to his. She points at him and says the same thing. While saying it, our protagonist keeps interrupting her, and she ends up asking him to shut up a bit. After a good amount of arguing, each decides to go to their room. But before they could fully enter, they should resolve this problem first, so they decide to meet in a more comfortable place, like at a table. At the table, they grab their cell phones and see the trending topics. So, In the trends, it was showing that everyone was having the same dream. What does that mean now? That they didn't have a shared dream? Maybe what they had wasn't even a dream, since the whole country basically had the same dream. But it seems that dying in the dream doesn't affect reality. Well, it wasn't confirmed by him, but by the people who died in the first test. They didn't have any injuries after the fall, they just woke up with some traumas. But his sister, on the other hand, was afraid of that. But looking at the people who fell there, they had some heavy trauma. But our protagonist kept eating. But here she wonders if everything was fine if they kept eating normally, since it seemed that outside it was a total mess. And Kang Hyun stops again and says that they can't do anything, so he should at least eat well. He then gets up and goes to the window. At the window, he starts to observe what was happening outside. Outside, we see several people protesting, breaking everything, taking everything good from the streets. Some ask for repentance of sins, saying that the final day has now come. So, looking at all this chaos, Kang Hyun's sister has a brilliant idea. She asks him if it's a good idea to go to work in all this chaos, but he asks her to wait, since if she goes out there, it's very likely she'll get hurt. And he asks her to remember some things about that dimension over there. Maybe the world could be destroyed now. But she asks him to stop dreaming, since the system could also be observed in real life. She asks him to open the system screen opens Aria, showing us the exact time for his dimension to be invaded by some monsters. This will only happen in 4 or 5 years, so until then, he will have enough time to prepare sufficiently to fight, who knows, against some monsters. However, our hero comments on some surprising things there, leaving his sister quite astonished about him. But also, thanks to Korea's efforts, they managed to basically establish peace with those crazy people who were destroying everything in front of them. And so, in the end, his first day came soon. And then he ends up opening his eyes. Opening them, he sees himself in that dimension again. In front of him, a system screen appears, congratulating our protagonist for entering this dimension again. Kangan is happy about this, but ahead, Kang Hyun once again sees a system screen asking him to accept a brief explanation about some important things. But no, he doesn't want to hear about explanations. He just wants to see his system screen. Kang Ruan, title unknown, level 1, strength 8, and agility 9, and so on. So there's no way to even compare, and it seems that what's in front of him is good. As for the mana status, he ends up thinking and wondering if he will be able to use magic, but he is sure he can. However, he has a unique ability there. His unique ability is resurrection. Upon seeing that thing, his eyes even shine. He realizes that it even seems like an overpowered ability. He could basically die but would return to life 24 hours before. But if he dies there by any chance and returns 24 hours, he will basically lose 50% of his power, his stats. Which means he might go back to level 1, but he ignores that, thinking it's incredible. Maybe in this world he won't be just a background character compared to the others. But again, Kang Hyun sees a new system screen asking him to accept the next stage of the test, but of course he accepts. If his stats are very low now, what he can do is improve, level up. So with the resurrection ability, he can basically do whatever he wants. So at that moment, he was quite excited to have that ability, without even the slightest idea of what was coming ahead. In an unknown castle, we observe him there, fighting some monsters. This monster was a goblin that advanced towards him, but with a small club in his hand, he advances towards the goblin. He then hits the goblin squarely. The little creature couldn't even hold all of Kang Hyun's power. He has now managed to pass Stage 2. Stage 2 was to eliminate some enemies, and then to finish off the little creature, he delivers the final blow. Now that he has defeated it, we observe his happiness. He kind of managed to attack it with a surprise attack, but also the feeling of killing something alive makes his whole body tremble. He killed someone. At this moment, he freezes up, but he couldn't be too happy since he only defeated one goblin. If by any chance there was another goblin trying to ambush him, it would be his end. But in front of him, another one appears, giving him a huge scare. He prepares and gets into a combat stance. But the goblin in front of him observes the other goblin behind him, totally destroyed. At this moment, after seeing this, we see the goblin general there extremely furious. He emanates an aura, staining the area around him. Now he is surprised that there was still one more. He thought he had defeated all the weaker goblins, but this goblin was much bigger than the others. And also, it carries something that is basically 1 meter long. If he gets hit by that, he will certainly die. And we observe the furious goblin there preparing to attack. He uses his small club to defend himself. He then used that to dodge, but it didn't help. He has a sedentary body, and this only worsens when he spent years unemployed without taking care of himself, without getting any job. And also, he chose a small weapon, a weapon that the system gave to Kang Hyun. And now, this was bad for him. And being weak with that weak weapon, he ends up losing it there in the first blow of the goblin general. He didn't even have a chance with a 1 meter sword, and at this moment, he was split in half by that goblin general. The goblin general didn't stop with just one attack. He continued delivering blow after blow on our Kang Hyun. The boy didn't even have a way to defend himself at this moment, thinking he was going to bite the dust. Almost closing his eyes and thinking now why only he has to go through this. At this moment, he was being dragged to a completely shattered place there. At that moment here, he asks himself why this goblin general hasn't killed him yet. He just at the moment only wanted to wake up from this nightmare, and now he just asks for someone to somehow help him there too. Also being dragged, he has the greatest fear. The fear is of dying. He basically SV, they're just other goblins approaching, and at this moment he screams. His sister wakes up there with his screams. Quickly, she runs there to the room to see what was happening. Screaming in the morning was not a good thing at this moment. We see her there, scared to see that Kang Hyun was there, completely covered by his blanket, saying that goblins were scary. And so, well, he got scared with that. What he remembers was just there. The guys torturing him, letting him die with bleeding there. However, they didn't just do that. They ripped SOS, well, it was very heavy, I won't say it here, and in the end, he died in the worst way. And the boy in the end also ended up shaking there out of pure fear. But now she there turns and asks him something if by any chance he would need to be going to the hospital. He asks for what? However, she replies with another answer, saying that in recent days the hospitals have been full of people who came from these weird dreams. So she wonders if he would need to be going there, but he said no. He wouldn't dream of something like that anytime soon. Since then, we see her saying that the people who died in the first test didn't even try to pass to the second test at this moment. We see that the first people who managed to pass had the dream of wanting to pass to the next one, and so it goes. And he was more than relieved to want to be participating even more in those bizarre dreams. If Luller so well, tonight he will be logging in again on that train. He will be ending the life of the goblin. But as soon as he logs in, the system says, "Welcome to our King Hyun." But unfortunately, an error occurred. The stadium will be basically changing to another, and the sorority will be tested again. Seeing this error, which was from the system, we see him grinding his teeth in anger. He screams like screams a billion names there, which, well, it's not good to say here either, because I hear, think he got angry with the system. But looking on the bright side of the system, he realizes there that he won't be receiving a penalty, like a penalty to be lowering his status since the creature was weak. And we also see there that the system restarted the whole stage. He spent hours there sleeping. He thought that by sleeping here he would be waking up already in his real life. But here he didn't even have a chance to be kind of managing to wake up. But then he would think of reaching the end to end these nightmares here soon. And so he advancing. He reaches a certain place, a place where he could be choosing some equipment, but now he will be choosing something different. The last time he chose something that even failed to help him kill the creatures. But now he wants to choose a crossbow. Or maybe a bow, but he maybe wants to know which one of the two was better. So to find that out, he will be testing it on the spot. Right there on the ground, we just see him learning to use these things. He wanted to see his skill at its maximum here in these bows. After aiming, he picks it up and aims and shoots in the direction of the goblin. But however, the arrow, instead of hitting, ends up missing him. He missed the attack, and missing, we see the goblin, their mutant angry, turning to his right. Well, since it failed, he could already be using then that spear he picked up there. The spear is better than this crossbow. He screams and runs towards him, and so getting closer, he throws that spear in the direction of the goblin, and the creature is hit dead on hitting him. He is happy to see that he defeated one. However, there were others, and so then he needed to replicate the same idea, but at the moment he was going to do that, he ends up stopping trembling. He asks himself what was happening, so then he turns to the side, but when he turns to the side, he sees that goblin jumping on top of him. He is split in half. He wakes up screaming in fear. We see that he still managed to speak in the test, but still, the test is not over. He still has another chance. So he logs in the next day more, motivated. The next day he even shows the middle finger to the system, saying that now it was his turn. The turn of being able to pass through that RDE there. But the weapons of today are all heavy, so it wouldn't be better to use a weapon he already used before, maybe this sword. Here it's good. He even remembers some videos he saw before, like the one where the video was of a guy extremely good with a sword. But here the scene is cut to the battlefield, where we observe him with the sword and a shield in hand, shouting for those failed bastards there to come at him. As he said, they do. And well, he meets an end. He wakes up scared and angry again with that system. He even starts laughing weirdly, saying that this will be his end, that next time there won't be a next time because there he will be ending the goblins' lives. In the background, we only see his sister totally scared with this new thing that was happening. The system gives him some motivation, but he asks for that thing to shut up and just give him the thing he needed, which was his initial test. The second round was about to start now. He might be picking up this weapon here, but something was happening. He watched some videos, and the attack pattern wasn't this pattern here, but according to the system, this was the exact pattern he should be following. Here, he only needed to swing that sword for 8 hours. He just needed to do that to level up, but falling back again, he opens his system screen where he saw his stats. But in the stats, there was something there, an additional point. He remembers that when he got, it was when he passed the first test. He had been out of it all this time. Maybe it wasn't so bad now. From now on, he could be using that single point to increase some of his strengths. So in the end, he invested the point he had in the strength stat. The scene is cut to the monsters, where he tried to attack the creatures. Now he would have his revenge. But that's not what happened. As he ended up having that tragic end, he died by the little creatures. So another day passes. The next day we see him there again in that place. He spends a few hours, like 5 hours, training there and swinging his sword to gain a point. He also does some exercises to make himself more agile and stronger, but even so, he couldn't hold off the goblins. The goblins still had quite a strong ability in a mana combat. He even managed to defeat the first goblins, but the last ones gave him more trouble. So the days go by, but he now ended up stuck on the hard set. But he needed to get stronger to the point where it was enough to win this round. Then, he manages to reach the limit of swings there. After achieving his strength limit, he falls there, hard on the ground. Lying on the ground, we see him looking up where the system appears there again. That thing that appeared was a new skill. Basic Sword F. This was a skill that helps with the correct posture and also distributes strength when swinging the sword. Now that he got the first thing from the system, he's going to be getting stronger. He only thanks the system. Now those goblin bastards will be living their worst nightmares, and now they will have to prepare because he is now much more powerful and more confident than before. But to get through this round here, he's going to need to eliminate a couple of them that are in the initial part, and there are also 3 in the second half. For now, the 2 in the closest parts here are the easiest to beat. He then manages to kill the goblins quickly at the beginning. He made a surprise attack to take down the weaker goblins,